Most people assume not caring about the Super Bowl means you simply aren't interested in football. But for a lot of people, the strange part isn't the game at all. The strange part is realizing they're having a completely different experience than everyone else in the room. A touchdown happens. Half the room jumps to its feet. Someone nearly knocks over a bowl of chips. A guy you've known for years is suddenly shouting at a television, like the outcome affects his mortgage. You glance at the screen, then at the clock, then back at the screen. Nothing happens. Not emotionally. You understand what's going on. You understand why everyone is excited. You just don't feel any pull toward it. And that creates a strange kind of conflict. Because after a while, you stop wondering why people care so much. You start wondering why you don't. This video isn't really about football. It's about what that moment reveals. Because for some people, not caring about the Super Bowl has less to do with sports and more to do with how their brain relates to excitement, belonging, uncertainty, and shared emotion. If that experience feels familiar, subscribe. You might recognize yourself in more of this than you expect. But before we get into the psychology, we need to start with the moment most people first notice the disconnect. Everyone around you reacts instantly, but you feel like you're watching a completely different event. Imagine being at a football watch party. A massive play happens, and the entire room explodes. People are jumping off their seats, screaming. A drink near the edge of the table spills everywhere, and someone is yelling furiously at the referee on the screen. In the middle of all that chaos, you just quietly glance at the clock to see how much time is left in the game. The disconnect starts when you realize a simple truth. The very event that is driving everyone else emotionally crazy isn't moving you at all. The truth is, most people in that room aren't just watching a game. They are participating in a shared emotional experience. But missing that connection instantly pushes you to the edge of the room, completely separate from everyone else. You look around and think, am I supposed to care more than this? People might think you're just bored. Not boredom. The strange feeling isn't about the game itself. It's the sudden realization that everyone else seems to be playing by a set of rules you never learned. And that difference actually starts long before a football ever enters the picture. The average fan isn't reacting to points on a scoreboard. They're reacting to what those points mean about their group. Watch what happens the moment a team scores. Fans celebrate as if something incredible just happened to them personally. Even the next morning, they still wake up feeling energized and on top of the world. It makes you wonder, why does this feel so personal to them? The truth is, human psychology has a fascinating loophole. Tribal identity and reflected glory allow the brain to treat group success as your own personal win. But there is a hidden cost to this. People become deeply emotionally invested in outcomes they have absolutely no power to control. Many assume the joy comes from the victory itself. The touchdown isn't the reward. For many people, belonging feels so much better than winning. But what happens when that emotional hook never lands on you? The assumption is that everyone enjoys excitement. That assumption falls apart surprisingly fast. Watch the room during a critical play. Everyone leans forward, holding their breath. But you just happen to notice the chips are running out on the table, and your attention slowly drifts towards something else entirely. It makes you wonder, what exactly are they feeling that I'm not? The reality comes down to a fundamental psychological principle. Different nervous systems seek different levels of stimulation and emotional intensity. Some people simply do not receive the same dopamine reward from collective excitement. The hidden cost of this difference is a quiet sense of frustration. You keep missing the emotional payoff everyone else seems to get so easily. You try to connect. You try to focus. Nothing clicks. Maybe you're not failing to enjoy the game. Maybe your brain never treated that stimulation as a reward in the first place. And that's where the experience starts becoming bigger than just sports. Most people think not caring is emotionally neutral. Sometimes it isn't. Picture this. Everyone is discussing the last play with high energy, but you have nothing meaningful to add. The conversation just keeps moving right along, leaving you behind. It makes you wonder, why do I feel more disconnected than bored? The reality comes down to how we connect. Shared rituals are what create social bonds. When you opt out of that emotional wave, you naturally lose that synchronization with the group. And there is a real cost to that. You can feel completely alone in a crowded room. That's the part nobody mentions. The loneliness doesn't come from the football game itself. It comes from standing completely outside a shared emotional moment. And football is only one version of this pattern. Once you notice the pattern, it starts showing up everywhere. Think about a viral event that dominates every single conversation. It could be a celebrity scandal, a massive fandom, or a new cultural trend. Everyone around you seems emotionally invested in it. But you mostly just want the topic to end. It makes you realize a deeper truth. This happens everywhere, not just here. The reality comes down to how we bond. Some people connect through shared high-energy enthusiasm, but others bond through interests that stay personal, quiet, and specific. The cost of this difference is a recurring sense of separation. You repeatedly feel out of sync with mass culture, whether it's music, movies, or viral internet debates. Same feeling. The truth is, you don't dislike community. You dislike communities built on borrowed excitement. And that is exactly why your indifference can bother other people. Notice how quickly a harmless opinion becomes a social problem. You casually say you don't care about the game, but the reaction you get feels oddly intense. Faces change, eyes turn judgmental, and the room suddenly grows cold. That silent hostility makes you wonder, why does my indifference upset people so much? It happens because their identity and belonging are completely fused with the event. When you reject the ritual, their brains don't hear a preference. They hear a direct rejection of who they are. The cost is instant, unnecessary friction. A simple, personal choice is suddenly treated as a social conflict. Nobody argues this hard about the score. You aren't challenging the game. You are accidentally challenging what the game represents, which leads to the uncomfortable truth buried underneath all of this. The most interesting question was never why some people care so much. It's why we assume everyone else should care the exact same way. Look at the contrast. While millions of people are glued to the screen holding their breath, millions of others are doing something entirely different. They are reading, walking, or just enjoying their own quiet space. The disconnect happens because of a common human mistake. We confuse shared importance with universal importance. We naturally struggle to understand experiences that sit outside our own emotional wiring. But maybe neither side is wrong. That's it. Shared attention is common. Shared meaning is not. Maybe the reason you never connected with the Super Bowl isn't that you missed the point. Maybe the point itself was just different for you. For some people, Shared excitement creates meaning. For others, meaning has to arrive before the excitement does. And those are not the same experience. You might be the kind of person who watches the room before watching the game. The kind who notices reactions before outcomes. The kind who has spent years wondering why certain things never felt important, simply because everyone else said they were. Some people inherit meaning from the crowd. Others have to find it for themselves. I'm curious about your version of this. Was there a moment when everyone around you cared deeply about something, and you felt completely disconnected from it? Leave it in the comments. I'd like to see how often this pattern shows up outside of sports. And if these kinds of psychological deep dives help you recognize parts of yourself you couldn't quite put into words, subscribe. There are more conversations like this ahead. Somewhere tonight, a room will erupt over a game, and somewhere else, someone will quietly look around and realize they've been watching the people the whole time.